Hey everyone, what is up? So, what's on the cards for today? Episode 70. I'm excited for this. It's just me, so it's a solo episode. And I was trying to think about what could possibly be helpful to you guys that listen every single week. And sometimes it gets not I wouldn't say bored, but human cycles. We come in, we dip in, we dip out when we need stuff. So this one is for those of you that are, well, I suppose for everyone, but for those of you that are like, why? What are the little things I'm listening to? Like, it's not a Stephen Bartlett episode where it's like massively eye opening, but when you listen, there's hints of things that really help. And I want to explain to you one of the principles from within Unshakable, and it's called region beta paradox. Now, that's a psychological term. It's been around Instagram a few times. On Chris Willis, I think, talked about it, but I've taken it in a slightly different vein because it's the small things add up over time, bad and good. So, while people only usually do the good, the bad. So basically, the example is in an abusive relationship. You won't leave if the abuse is not big enough to make you leave, but it'll break you down so much over the 5-year period that it's worse for you than if it was big enough in the first couple of months for you to actually leave. If that makes sense. Now, no one ever talks about the good side too. So, region beta paradox is the small things add up to be more effective than the big thing short term. So, if you apply that to the good, the pattern is the same. Is the small good things add up to be far better than the one big thing you do short term. So you think about the boom or bust cycle that you might be going through, where you stop eating this, you stop doing that, and all that. Those are big things, right? And they make a big difference. And then what happens 4 months later? You go, little things start to creep back in, little things creep back in, little things creep back in, till eventually that whole 3-month cycle that you did, you're back to where you were, square one, and you're not making any progress. Now, I want to tell a story first and foremost. It's like, why do I back region beta paradox so much? Like, why do I, from a personal experience? Because, you can look at any gaslighting examples, but what is it for me? Like, where in my life have I had region beta paradox? And there's obviously a lot of different stories, but the one big one for me is probably the biggest turning points in my rugby career, from an upward spiral to a downward spiral. So I think it started as like a slightly blocked left ankle, which then I ran on, and I wasn't running well, and my body compensates, right? So if I was running fast, I then couldn't run properly with a blocked ankle, so I would still run fast, but I would use something else, and people do that. So it then went up my left leg, so then my what's it called, like adductor, would then shock when I was running, and then that would go into my pubis. It shot down the other side, then went back up, and eventually settled into like pubis osteitis. So if you've never had that, picture taking a needle and just below your pants line, right center, was where your pubis sits. It's like someone poking a hole, like a needle, just as every time you walk or run, and it's a sharp burning pain. Now, I was playing over a couple of months with this, so that obviously developed ankle into adductor into pubis, and I would still pitch up and train, still pitch up and play. So I was playing all the games. It was to the point where I didn't know how it was being managed, but it got to a point where I thought I was being soft, because we went and got checked, and they're like, "Oh, it's just a hernia." Everyone's got a hernia, right? That's what I got told. And I would go and train, but I got mocked for looking like those monsters from Wrong Turn. So I don't know if you ever watched that movie, but essentially they like run really funny, like running after trucks and things. And it was funny at the time, but I'd train and then go in from training and literally go to the first physio room. And sometimes I'd cry because it was so painful, but it was crying probably out of frustration and pain, because I know how capable I was in training, but I wasn't able to do that no matter how hard I tried. And no matter what I did, it was sore. So you're trying to run really quickly and it's sore, and you're running and you've got this pain. So the whole time the pain is slowly starting to take over. So mentally, from being up here and then suddenly this pain comes in, and everyone's like, "Oh, you can play through a bit of pain." Yes, you can. But over time, it starts to break you down. I mean, just to put into context, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning, from lying down to sitting up, without rolling over and pushing myself up. Because what ended up happening is I had something called Gilmore's groin, which is where your abs, there's like 6 layers, and they started to split apart, which meant that like it was there was no connection between upper and lower. I mean, I know that sounds drastic. There would have been probably really small holes, but enough for me to not be able to sit up without it being like excruciatingly painful. But this went on for maybe 6 months, 4 months, 6 months, where I'd pitch up, train, and put on a brave face, and then go home and just struggle, and then come in and play. And then you've got your caffeine, you've got your stimulants, you've got even they give you for performance, as well as your anti-inflammatories, your painkillers. And I was constantly on that cycle of just like anti-inflammatory painkiller just get you through it, because from what the assessment that they originally had was that it was just a hernia. I should have been fine to play with this. I remember particularly one day walking into the physio room to try and get I was so desperate to just be relieved of the pain. And the one physio looked at me, and he was standing next to it. And I both respected these guys so much. And he just looked and he said, "What's wrong now? Do you want some treatment on your little toe?" And I just turned around and walked off. And I was just like, imagine going through, I was going through a hell of a lot in terms of pain and trying to push myself and just be there, because I was a top performer. And the people that you're supposed to go to help you and look after you are then going, "Well, are you really?" And I know the other guy had also tried to tell me, think about the pain in your mind. Sometimes you got higher pain receptors. And I finished off the season, played in the final, ended up doing my AC joint in the final too. So that was honestly, it was at one point I was like, is this a joke? Because I'm playing with this pubis and whatever it is going on here. It was so sore. And then in the final, that went. So that whole joint then starts to move, but you can carry on playing, right? So I played the rest of the game. Went through the whole off season going in and trying to do my rehab, trying to make sure I get it done, and came back in the new season and was back to square one. So eventually I said, I need to get a second assessment. And they're like, "No, there's nothing wrong with you." And I said, "No, there is something wrong here, and you guys haven't picked it up." So I got given a Harley Street appointment, which is obviously really nice. And within 5 minutes, the guy looked at me, did one little assessment, and he said, you need an operation. There's a hole there. And he was like, "Just out of interest, how long have you had this?" And I was like, "Oh, 4 to 6 months. I'm not exactly sure." And he said, "If you've got this for longer than 3 weeks, we opt, because it just doesn't get better. And unless you can rest for 6 months, there's no way around it." And I was like, on one hand, I was like gutted, because obviously you have to go for an op, which is now 6 weeks out in preseason when you're trying to prove yourself. But on the other hand, I was almost justified that I'd put myself into thinking that I was a victim, that I was soft, that, I was just overthinking things because I wasn't getting any recognition or whatever it was. I don't know if it's recognition is the right word, but that got fixed. Then the next battle started of trying to reprove myself in getting selected again. We'd had 2 new guys come from South Africa, and they were really good. And so you actually just start to fall into the category where no one really knows on the outside. So they just think, "Oh, he's getting old, so he's just lost his touch." But I had to try and rebuild myself. It got to a point where the year before I retired, I managed to come on in the semi-final and pretty much get a man of the match performance. And everyone was like, "Oh, that was incredible." And I just felt so good. I just let go of everything, and it just felt good to be back on top. But that story, I think, was if I'd had my ankle sorted out sooner, or as soon as my adductor went, instead of just trying to play through and think, "Okay, I'm being soft," is actually just understand that what I was going through was important, and that I needed to take control and make sure that I got on top of it, and not expect other people to get on top of it for me, because I was one part of many, but to me, I'm one part of one. And I think when it comes to region beta paradox, and why that principle, I love it, is if you can start to recognize the small things that are starting to creep in and you excuse them, understand you have no idea what's coming around the corner if you let them carry on building up. So think about stress. If you're stressed, if you're starting to not stick to your routines, if there's something in your life that's starting to build in a small way that you recognize but you don't take action on, just be aware that that is going to hit you, and at a point where it's big, and it's going to be a lot harder to take control then. Another example is you think about how you put on weight, right? You don't realize you're putting on weight until you look in the mirror one day and you're like, "What?" And it's because it happens so incrementally, so small, in such small doses, that you just get used to it. Your set point changes. Now, I want to take that principle. So there's a warning, right? So not a warning, but like just be aware, guys. Like, come on, just think about those little things that you're letting slip, those little things that are starting to get on top of you. Take action now. Don't try and justify that not taking action by going, oh, it's not actually that important. It's really not, it's not breaking me as much as it should be, so I'll be fine. Please, while you have the ability to recognize them, take action now and get rid of that stuff. Like, have a high standard and stick to that. Now, the same thing works on the positive, the flip side, right? And I know a lot of us, it's sometimes really hard to have faith in that, like, yeah, but it's not big enough that it's going to make a difference. I'm drinking a glass of water a day and I'm not really noticing a difference. I'm doing breath work, but it's not really noticing a difference. And these are just examples, by the way. I'm going for a walk every day. I'm walking once a week, or anything that you think like I'm sticking to meetings and I'm getting to them on time in a business sense. There's so many different examples where you try something good and it's not having that immediate like life-changing effect, the region beta paradox thing, that you end up stopping doing it. Now, it's especially important to recognize when you're making changes. Try and think about, you want to stop doing the things that aren't serving you, but you also want to be aware of the things that are serving you that are so small that you might not recognize them. Like bedtime routines, for example, if you're thinking from a very personal aspect. Journaling that you think isn't having an effect anymore. But what happens when those things are no longer there? And those are the things that you've got to carry on doing. Now, it's about faith, I suppose. That's where I'm trying to, like, we really want certainty all the time. And when things don't give us that direct reward that we're after, it doesn't give us certainty. So therefore we go, it's a waste of time. But actually what I want us to think about is try and think long term. Try and think about, if you did this for a year, do you think it could change how you see things? And if it does, like, give it a go. Like, what have you got to lose? I'm just an advocate. Like, we live in a world where instant gratification is there. Your parcels is delivered the next day, and if they're not, you get frustrated and angry. Payments go through. You don't have to wait for the internet to dial up anymore. Just everything happens straight away. Except when it comes to like changing yourself or personal development or becoming resilient, like all of those things will take a bit of time unless you have a magical, and there are magical pills. And a magical pill is a decision, a need, a circumstance in life that you forced to rise up to. You can do that. But for those of you that are sitting like that mid-tier where it's just like, yeah, I want to make the change, but I'm not really doing it. I want to do this, but the pain's not big enough. It's like, well, then just start with those small things. Because that region beta paradox term, like nature does it like a tree. If you think about a tree, you plant a seed. Okay, I'll use my bonsai as an example. Like, I planted bonsai seeds 6 months ago, maybe even longer than that. And they're now growing and they're about as tall as my hand. And I know that I'm not even going to see flowers out of those for the next 9 years. But when I first started bonsaiing, I planted and I said to someone, I was excited. I said, look, I've planted these Japanese black pines. This is what they're going to look like. And they're like, oh, why don't you just buy a 5-year-old one? Or what's the point? You have to wait so long. And I was like, because in 5 years' time, I'm going to have these seedlings being 5 years old. And that's going to be satisfying because good things come to those that wait, like proper foundations fit there. And I just wanted to like share that thought, that download, that pattern with you guys is like, if you're trying to make a change, if you're trying to make an improvement, just understand that those things will take time. You don't get the instant gratification that everything else gives you. You've got to have a bit of faith in the fact that the actions you're taking now will benefit you in the future. And again, the thought that comes with it is everything that you have now, if you really think about it, is a result of everything that you did in the past. All the decisions you made, the actions you took, whether you consistently got up and you got your 5 a.m. routines going, if that was your thing, or you ate well, or you started your business, or you had kids, all of that, those choices, you're now currently living out the consequences of those choices you make. Now, why that's important to recognize is think about everything you think and do now, you're not going to benefit from now. You're going to benefit from now in the future. You're going to benefit from in the future. So think about that ease, like, if you can always prioritize your future self. So you're just like, whatever I am now, I'm a result of what I did. So therefore, I can't worry about what I am and am not now. because the past me was doing the best that it could be to present this result of who I am. So you have to accept, you have to love, you have to appreciate. You'd be like, because I'm appreciating everything that I've done in the past to get me into this position. And when I do that, it means like, let's do more of that kind of stuff, because I'm recognizing the effort that's gone into it. And so your mindset, your frame of mind, like just future self, future self, future self, like that's going to stop you from thinking, I am not this now. I can't do this now. And just go, well, in the future, I want to do this. So I'm going to take that action. And if you can really get into that, you can region beta paradox, like routines or thinking styles or a life that's going to slowly change. And what I mean by slowly change is it's not going to change in a way that you're like, bam, decided that, and then this happened, and now look at that result. It's going to be a kind of life that in a year's time, you're going to have been in the zone, right? You're in flow for a year, let's say, and you're just like, you're obsessed, future self, I've done it. And then suddenly you take a breath. You're in an elevator and the sun is rising or setting, and you go, wow, what a beautiful skyline. And you get into this reflection mode. And then you look around and you're like, am I really living this life? Like, have I really got the result? Like, I cannot believe that I'm living this life that I so wanted back then and never thought I'd reach. But yet here it is. And then you'll get reinforced with a sense of like, actually that thought and that decision did matter. So it brings me to like, understand that the thoughts and decisions and actions that you're taking now really do matter, but not for now, but for the future. So don't worry about if you're a perfectionist and you're not a perfectionist and all those things that people try and make a negative. If you can create critical mass and a compounding effect on anything, so you think about finances and compounding effect, it's the same, region-based paradox, like a compounding effect on something that you can do now, it's going to help in the future. That means like if you decide to do something daily, be a perfectionist with it and put that, not pressure, like that privilege, that excitement, it will change it from pressure to privilege by saying this is like, think about in a year's time, if you look back, if you've done that every single day, that's going to mean far more to you than if you didn't do it and you didn't do it. Because what ends up happening is you go, today it's not that important that I don't do it, right? And I do want to make sure that we're contextualizing. You have to be in the right space in life to be able to move forward. And I want us to like kick into gear of like, how are we going to be a high performer? What does that mean? I'm going to grow my resilience because I've got businesses, kids, there's so much going on and I can't change that life, but I can change my mind. So actually, I want you to realize this element. So when I introduce that perfectionism isn't in there, is like, if you've committed to do something every day, understand that if you can just put your feelings aside and do that thing that you committed to do, that is a foundation that you can never ever take away because you've taken the action daily. But if you choose to go, not today, we'll just do tomorrow. So the choice is the big one here. And then tomorrow comes like, oh, I'll do it the next day. It's okay. I've got a plan. Like I've thought about this. And then you do it for 4 days. And then the next week comes, you're like, oh, I'll do it again tomorrow. What ends up happening is that's an example of region beta paradox for the negative, because you've chosen not to do it. You've chosen not to do it. And then they add up till eventually you've been put back into a space where you're not doing it anymore. And you go, oh, I'm going to get back to that. But if you can summon up this like understanding and this, the why understanding of like, actually, I know that if I don't do this today, choose not to do this today, I know that that's going to be adding up to something that's going to be a negative effect for my future self. And I want to bring it back to like choice. If you've elected to do something every single day as a challenge, for example, like 99 press-ups, me and a friend are doing them, then understand that if you go through the day and you genuinely forget, forgive yourself, like you were human, right? But if you sit there and you go, I've got 99 press-ups to do, and I'm not feeling it today, I'm going to get back to it tomorrow, and then you choose not to do it, that choice that you've just made, that's going to have an effect in the future. So make the right choices. If things are unintentional, we can't control those, but what you can control is your choices. And by the way, if you get to a point where that 99 press-ups, if say you take that challenge on, is too much, don't stop doing it, scale it down. Like just change it to 20 press-ups. Because what we want to do is create action in our lives. Create action on something, because that action creates results. When you have results, you can't take them away. Okay, so that's what I really want to emphasize. So, like, I hope I've weaved in really nicely the story about region beta paradox, how it adds up to something big. So, by the way, just to end that off, I never got my career back to on the trajectory that it could have been on, because I waited too long to act on something that I knew I should have. That region beta paradox. I mean, I learned a hell of a lot. I'd never take it away. Don't get me wrong. Like, those are formed who I am as such a gift. Like, I'm so grateful that I went through that. Genuinely am. Genuinely, I know people are just saying it genuinely, because I wouldn't be who I am today if I wasn't pushed into learning the necessary things that I went through then. And I know that I might be going through something else now that's, again, learning. And if we can constantly just change our perspective and build some resilience around it, like, life will come at you no matter what you do. It just depends on how you choose to go back at life that will make the difference. Because you'll always learn, we'll always get there, we'll always build the resilience. Like, if you do or you don't, it's going to happen. So if you make a hard choice, you make an easy choice, you've made the choice, something's going to happen, right? So I want us to really just take a moment now to reflect on what are the small things that you're currently letting in that are going to add up, that are not going to serve you. And reflect on what are the small things that you are currently doing that are positively serving you, that you need to make sure you refocus on and keep doing them, even if they seem small and insignificant, because they are the things that are making the most difference to you. Okay, so 21 minutes and 44 seconds, I think, is enough. I've said what I need to say, and I really enjoyed where that went. I was originally going to do a Don story episode, but I started talking, and it didn't excite me. Like, I was just talking a script and all that kind of stuff. This one resonated. So I really hope this has helped you in a time of need, and a time of realization, and a time of awareness. And I really, really am grateful for you guys that come and do listen, for the subscribers that we got on YouTube, for those that have gone through the effort of rating us on Spotify, that have come back and push the watch time up so that we get more exposure. Like, you guys may think that you're just a number, but if I had you all in a room here, I'd be super grateful to know, like, every single individual action, listen, time, all of you count. And I really, really, really want to make sure that we are adding as much value to your life, because your time that you're spending listening to this and engaging with this, it's important. Time is so precious, isn't it? So I just want to say thank you. I'm very grateful for you. If this helped you, share it with other people. Like, let's just create this web of good, and just, whether that's through here or this has inspired you to do something, like, please go for it. Like, I really think we need to lift ourselves up out of the rhythm of powerlessness and not being able to do much, and just realize how fantastic we are as individuals. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. And I'm going to remind you, Ubuntu, we are who we are through others. So I'll work on me for you if you work on you for me. All right. Have a great day.